It was a Wednesday evening as the pale moon shone bright in the dark blue sky. Number 7 of The Lees in Westcliff-on-Sea was a tall building made up of 8 individual flats named Runnymede with a spiralling carpeted staircase. On the ground floor belonging to flat 1A was a small garden protected by a gate and a large bush. There was another flat on the ground floor, that being flat 1, hiding under a balcony like a hermit's hut. The building was lovely. A stone walkway up to the glass front door with green framing, a black gate with Runnymede in bronze on it, a brick wall separating the gate from the pebbled parking space opening, and another brick wall separating the ground floor garden from the street. The Lees was slightly uphill from the seafront, looking over the beautiful sight of the beach. Returning to the building from his pub in town, 31-year-old Michael Hooper of Flat 4 grabbed his knocked-over food bin, cursing the bin men for carelessly leaving it on the ground with the rotting bag still attached to it. Michael was a successful businessman, in the middle of a bad breakup, and a lifetime sufferer of utter despondence. He had dark brown wavy hair, darkish Caucasian skin, bright brown eyes, and a permanent scar on his chin caused by acne squeezing in his youth. He was very fidgety, always rubbing his chest and getting tired easily due to what he blamed on an undiagnosed case of asthma. Michael was returning from a particularly exhausting day at work, having been overseeing a fancy dress party where he forced himself to wear blue and black tartan trousers, a white shirt with purple square patterning, a red, black and gold schoolboy tie, a blue blazer with pink and gold floral stitching, dark red braces with white pinstripes, a black waistcoat with a bronze back, red nail polish, and a felt purple top hat his cousin gave to him as a gag gift. Using his keys chained to his waist, Michael unlocked the main building entrance and begrudgingly forced himself up the eternal staircase to his flat on the very top floor. Michael's flat was more long than wide. The hallway was mostly bare, serving primarily to connect to the various rooms of the house. There were 2 small steps going up towards the sitting room with 2 pairs of steel toe-cap boots resting by the bottom step. There was a coat hanger nailed to the wall in between the doors to the guest bedroom and the main bathroom, with a leopard print jacket, a leather jacket, a hand-knitted scarf, and a scarf with beads all hung up. Michael entered the flat, sighing and swinging the door shut before forcing off his slip-on work boots. He was already out of breath and coughing due to the stairs. The only light in the dark flat was the light shining from the stairwell through the door's window. He reached for the light switch and by coincidence the hallway light turned on at the same time the stairwell light turned off. Michael's small kitchen had dark grey tiled floors, a marble counter that extended around the room with a bread bin, drying rack, dual circular sinks with a rotating tap, bottles of Bamboy Scarlet Gin, Damien blended malt whiskey and Curvacer cognac, a microwave, a wooden circular chopping board, a small plastic basket of seasonings, a gas cooker, a fruit bowl, and some china. A traditional tin trash can sat in a small corner just by the open doorway. A small counter above the recycling bin had a large bucket with all types of bin bags inside and a framed photograph of a woman sitting on a bench with her legs crossed. There was a glass door with a white outline that led to some stairs leading down to the communal garden. Under the main kitchen counter were some cupboard doors with small silver handles and the oven. Behind one cupboard door was the washing machine, behind another was the fridge, and behind another was the freezer. There were some cupboards above the counter where the microwave was and above the corner where the washing machine was. In the corner of the counter by the bread bin was a bowl filled with a full cocktail kit, including a strainer, a brush, 2 metal straws, a cocktail spoon, a masher, and a bottle opening corkscrew. Next to the bowl was a cocktail shaker and 3 double-sided jiggers of varying measurements. Michael entered the kitchen, turned on the light, approached the sink, and slammed the food bin down behind the tap in front of the window. He carefully removed the filthy bag and disposed of it in the main bin. He put a new food bin bag inside and noticed a tomato stem on the counter. He aggressively grabbed it and threw it into the food bin before slamming the lid shut. He suddenly tensed up and quickly rested one hand on the counter while he held his other hand to the centre of his chest. His heart was pulsing more heavily but not faster than usual. Michael took a deep breath and calmed himself down. The pulse stopped. He took his mobile phone from his trouser pocket and went through his contacts. Once he found who he was looking for, he put the phone to his ear and waited for them to pick up, turning the light off and coughing violently as he walked out of the kitchen. The sitting room was comprised of a fine leopard print chaise lounge, a black corner chaise couch, a burgundy wooden chest in front of the couch serving as a table of sorts with coasters, candles, a small bust of Buddha, a television remote, and a large pizza box with the lid down all on top of it, a varnished wooden dining table with black leather chairs around it, an aquamarine wooden bookshelf next to the dining table with cabinet doors on the bottom, a tall red table lamp stand next to the double balcony doors with a large painted pottery bowl on it, a carpet directly in front of the balcony doors, a widescreen television resting on top of a silver chest with brown leather patched corners, a videocassette and DVD player connected to the television on the ground next to the silver chest, a tall black bookshelf filled with books and vinyl records, and a grey armadillo cowhide rug on the ground in front of the balcony door. In front of the square fireplace embedded into the wall was a large navy blue chest with copper metal corner patches and latches, and on top of it was an unwatered and unattended lily plant. Michael jumped up the steps and walked into the darkness of the sitting room without turning the light on. He took a seat on one of the leather chairs and hunched over. He coughed again uncontrollably before the person on the other end of the phone answered with a warm greeting. "Yes, hello, Marion," said Michael. "Ah, Michael," said Marion. "How are you?" "I'm good, thank you. How are you?" Marion Kramer was a tall, curly-haired blonde bombshell of 32. Having known Michael and his ex-partner Angela since high school, Marion retained a neutral stance on the situation in spite of the fact that she felt Michael was the more reasonable one. She was polite, sincere, and not overly emotional due to the repression of her own past traumas, opting to take life one steady step at a time with her partner Lewis, with the two of them both working for the same accounting firm. "Yes, we're both fine," she said. "Are you still joining us for dinner in half an hour now?" "That's why I'm calling, actually," said Michael with uncertainty. I don't think I'll be able to make it to dinner tonight." "Oh, come now, Michael. Is this because you're feeling low?" "No, it's not that. It's just this awful cough. I'm terribly out of breath and it's been such a long day. I really shouldn't have gone to the pub tonight." "Well, Lewis and I did say that we might come along, but he didn't get a hold of his brother's police uniform. You know what he gets like when his mind is set on something." "Was it fun?" "It was, yes, but it was exhausting." "And you still have that cough, you say?" "Yes, it's been a few days now. I really must get a diagnosis." After an almost argumentative back and forth about Michael's requirement to get an inhaler prescription, Michael finally relented and agreed he would get it done in the morning. In order to quickly change the topic, Marion asked Michael what he dressed up as for the fancy dress. "Like a complete tart," he chuckled before coughing again. "These horrible black and blue tartan trousers. It really isn't a bit of me." "First you waste our precious time preparing a 3-person meal, now you call me a tart?" Marion jokingly snapped. I know, what can I say?" "Well, we can always invite Angela, the moody cow." Now, be polite." "I'm only joking, Michael." The two of them chuckled again. Is she still officially residing there?" asked Marion. No, she dropped her key off earlier today," said Michael. "I wish she would have said so beforehand, but I think it's best I didn't see her today." "Has she taken anything?" "No, she still has a lot of things to gather. I was under the impression her brother was going to help her at some point, but I still haven't heard from either of them." "And you're sure you'll be alright?" Michael reassured Marion as he got up and went to turn the sitting room light on. He attempted to continue the conversation, but was stopped. The pulsating of his suddenly heavy heart began to overwhelm his ears again. He stared directly at the pale moon shining through the glass of his balcony doors as it illuminated the blackening skyline. He could hear Marion's faint voice in the back of his mind as she continuously asked him if he was still there. Michael could feel something, but he couldn't see it clearly. He stared into the moon as if he was trying to find something on its surface. Once the pulsating died down, and Michael snapped himself out of his trance by blinking 100 times per second, he replied to Marion's increasingly concerned cries. "Michael, are you okay?" she asked. Yes, he stammered. I'm fine, Marion. I just felt a little bit faint, is all." "Michael, you really must see a doctor." "My breathing feels fine now, I I don't know, I feel a bit strange. Why don't you just get a good night's sleep? I know you've been drinking behind the bar again. Oh no, never. Truth be told, I think I'm just annoyed that the bin men practically violated my food bin again. Did they leave the bag inside? Yes, they did! Michael was infuriated and making himself more exhausted even thinking about it. It's biodegradable, isn't it? It goes with the food in the bin. It smells bad enough already, so imagine using it and things rotting away inside of it twice! The two continued their mutual frustration over the ultimately pointless topic before Marion inquired as to what Michael's evening plan would be to at least try and relax. Michael decided on eating the leftover pizza from the night before, watching an episode of Play for Today, and going to bed. Marion offered to come over with Lewis at lunchtime the following day, as she knew full well that he wouldn't have anything to feed himself with. Marion, you sound like my mother now, said Michael. I don't need you and Father Lewis to feed me. Well, apparently you do, she said. Either you let us in or we scale the walls to reach you and risk breaking our necks. Accepting her offer with a smile, Michael finally managed to wish his friend a good evening and hung up, having become tired of the conversation. He immediately began to cough before turning to look at the moon again. He didn't have the same feeling as before, instead feeling a more subtle discomfort in his chest before finally turning away and throwing himself onto the chaise lounge. He rubbed his chest a little before closing his eyes. He took a deep breath in through his nose and out through his mouth. He eventually threw himself back up onto his feet and walked over to the balcony to admire the seafront view. The tide was high, but the sound of waves was practically inaudible through the thick glass and frame of the balcony doors. He had a peaceful feeling as the darkness fully consumed the small town, and evening turned to night. Michael was happy, although his smirk instantly went away as he turned and looked at the blue chest. He picked up the lily and admired it for a second. He began to cough again more violently. Once he cleared his throat and relaxed, he continued to admire the plant, turning it in his hands as he did so. I never liked you, he said. Dried up, putrid, ugly-looking thing. That's why I never bothered watering you after she left. Michael started to cough again, more violently, causing him to put the plant down and try to stop himself so he could catch his breath. He waited a moment and breathed as he rubbed his chest. Once Michael was composed, he picked the plant up again and continued to look at it with resentment burning in his eyes. He cursed the plant, declaring that of all things that Angela would be collecting, the plant wasn't one of them. Taking the plant to the kitchen, Michael threw it into the trash can and slammed the lid back down, but the plant was too tall, so he attempted to use his foot to slam the lid shut, although this only caused it to start sliding off towards the ground. He grabbed it with his hands just in time and growled. Using what little common sense he had, Michael snapped the overly tall parts of the lily off before successfully slamming the lid down. Satisfied, he made his way back down the hallway. As he walked past, Michael's arm brushed the beaded scarf on the coat hanger. He stopped, looking up at it and the hand-knitted scarf with disdain. Only seconds later, with a scowl on his face, he pulled the scarves off of the hanger and continued down the hallway towards the sitting room, throwing them into a corner and turning the hallway light off. Michael's bedroom was mostly taken up by a king-size bed with a black velvet frame, sporting a duvet and pillows with floral green covers that had pink and yellow flowers on them. The floor was completely carpeted. Also populating the room was a large olive green desk with 3 drawers and a varnished oak wooden top. On top of the desk were various candles, 2 metal elephant statues, and a black and white framed photograph of Michael and Angela laughing together. There were large wooden cupboards with drawers opposite the bed against the wall, which in turn were next to a small door with a cloudy glass window and an old brass doorknob leading into a small bathroom consisting of a shower, a toilet, a small sink, and a cabinet. Next to the bathroom door was a small black desk of drawers with an even smaller television on top of it. There were 2 large white desks of drawers resting diagonally from the bed in small openings left by the wall going inwards, each with a lamp on them. On the wall above the bed was a framed black and white photograph of Blondie's Debbie Harry performing on stage with her signature in the corner of the picture's white outline. Michael turned the light on and slumped onto the edge of the bed before removing his waistcoat and taking his braces off of his shoulders. After taking a moment to think, Michael fully undressed and changed into his silky purpley red pyjamas with navy blue buttons, topping his nighttime outfit with a fluffy grey dressing gown Angela's mother had left behind several months ago. Although it was a few sizes too big, Michael took great comfort in it and wore it almost every night, despite Angela thinking it was weird. Deciding on a whiskey and lemonade to go with his leftovers, Michael poured himself a double Damien using the 50mm jigger before adding some lemonade from a bottle in the fridge. He rinsed the jigger and put it on the drying rack. Michael then sliced a wheel out of a drying old lemon and dropped it into the glass of golden whiskey-flavoured lemonade. He returned the Damien bottle to its rightful place with the others. After returning the lemonade to the fridge, Michael left the kitchen with his drink and returned to the sitting room. He let out a relieving groan as he sprayed out onto the couch and began to finally relax. He then started to cough again and rubbed his chest until it calmed down. He took a sip of his drink before leaning back into the couch and tapping his fingers on his chest. He eventually stopped and put his hand to his side before taking another sip. After a moment, Michael leaned forward and put the drink on a coaster. He shifted to sitting on the edge of the couch and lifted the pizza box lid, revealing a piece of garlic bread, 4 whole slices, and a half-eaten 5th slice. He grabbed the half-eaten slice and took a bite. He then widened his eyes, dropped the pizza slice, snapped his fingers, jumped up, and headed back towards the kitchen. While Michael looked around the fridge for the cherry tomatoes a mere day away from their sell-by date, the stairwell light began to flicker. The hallway light began to do so as well. As Michael found the tomatoes and walked back towards the hallway, the light ceased flickering and remained on. Michael caught the hallway light turning back on one last time and, confused, he stood still like a statue, and a slight chill ran down his back. He waited a moment before slowly going towards the bathroom door and peered into the room. Seeing nothing in the darkness, he very slowly reached for the light switch and turned the bathroom light on. Michael's main bathroom was admittedly quite lavish. It had a long sink with 2 taps, a large mirror with a light above each of the 2 top corners, teal blue tiled walls with some hidden cabinet doors, a large brown basket and some plastic boxes with VHS tapes in them underneath the sink, a toilet with a fluffy lid, and a large flower in a vase at the head of the bathtub. The toilet roll was on the container for the toilet brush with the handle going through its centre. To Michael's relief, there was not a stranger in sight. He looked away and turned the light off. Michael stopped and used the switch that controlled the stairwell light to turn it on and off a few times. He saw the light flash on and off through a small window near the ceiling. Still confused and a little scared, Michael looked at the light switch panel more closely and tapped it a couple of times. He turned the light on one last time and went over to the door, opening it to look down into the stairwell. He knew he was perhaps being ridiculous over simple faulty wiring, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. He looked down the dark and empty stairwell to find nothing. He shook his head a few times before disappearing back into his flat and closing the door, double locking it to ensure his own safety. He walked back over to the switches. He looked up at the window, seeing the light from the hallway shining through before turning the light off one last time. He went up the hallway steps and moved closer to the sitting room, tensing his grip on the packet of tomatoes. He stepped outside his bedroom and reached in to turn the light on. Nothing. He turned the light back off and returned to the couch. Once he was comfortable, Michael put the packet of tomatoes in the pizza box next to the remaining slices. He lied back on the couch but was still nervous. He looked around the sitting room and still saw nothing. Satisfied, he sat up and leaned towards the table. He grabbed the television remote and set up his program of the night. It got to 10 o'clock. The moon continued to shine brightly through the shading clouds. Michael was watching play for today's Shakespeare or Bust. He took a bite out of the last slice of pizza before throwing it back into the box. He grabbed the tomatoes and leaned back to rest his legs on the couch. Not even a moment later, he put the tomatoes to the side and began to cough again. This coughing was more violent than the last one, resulting in Michael rubbing his chest for a few seconds before reaching for a partially used toilet roll. He took a strand of paper and neatly folded it before coughing something semi-solid into the tissue. It was greenish-white phlegm, the kind that one with a chest infection coughs up when it first becomes bad. He looked at it with disgust before folding it up and shoving it into the toilet roll's centre. He put the roll aside and reached over for his drink on the table, grasping it with both hands as he looked back at the television and relaxed again. He coughed twice again, much more gently than before. He grabbed a tomato from the packet and popped it into his mouth, eating it as he intently watched his program. He took another large swig before leaning towards the table without putting his legs down to rest the glass on the coaster. He lay back on the couch and crossed his arms. After a moment, Michael began to lose consciousness before quickly waking himself up. It was the scene at 25 minutes and 15 seconds where the trio first noticed the voluptuous blonde woman in yellow and her snide sailor friend. After a moment, Michael sat up, grabbed another tomato and popped it into his mouth. He then took what remained of the last slice of pizza and wolfed it down. He grabbed his drink and swiftly downed what remained of it. When he looked back at the television, the show had been paused. He coughed as he chewed before cursing the remote. He grabbed it and pressed the play button. Nothing happened. He checked the flashing light on the controller as he pressed the button again. Working. Confused and slightly annoyed, he tried pressing the button several times, but still nothing happened. He somehow managed to press the button successfully and the play resumed. He accidentally pressed the pause button immediately afterwards, causing the teleplay to stop again. Oh, for fuck! The teleplay suddenly turned to static. What followed was the screen suddenly switching to a series of strange, psychedelic imagery and optical illusion-like patterns, almost as if the television had become a gateway into a void of cosmic matter. Michael stared at the screen in bemusement. He stood up and slowly walked over to the television. The images soon colorized and began to flash blue, red and white. The images faded to a window frame on loop for what felt like forever, occasionally interrupted by corrupt images of Michael, Angela, Michael's mother Georgina, and some of the staff that worked for Michael at his pub before finally cutting to a close-up of an eyeball with a slit exposing its innards. Michael stared in shock and horror as he zoned out at the sight of the bizarre images. He snapped out of it by swinging his hands into his face, almost causing him to fall backwards. He took his hands away and widened his eyes before breathing out aggressively. He looked back at the television, which showed little more than a paused frame of the play. Unnerved, Michael marched back to the couch and picked up the remote. He looked down at it and back at the television before pressing the play button. The teleplay resumed without much trouble. Confused, Michael decided against watching the program, turned everything off and threw himself back onto the couch. Feeling dizzy, he put a hand to his head as the heavy pulse returned. He composed himself before sloppily going towards the hallway and using the wall to guide him towards the bathroom. Upon turning the light on, Michael froze at a seemingly innocent but downright horrifying sight. The very same lily he threw away earlier sat where the other flower was at the head of the bath. It was still damaged, but not in the trash where it belonged. He stared at it for a moment as he mustered up the strength to say something. "What are you doing here?" he asked. No response, naturally. He continued to stare at it and tilted his head slightly. As if the wind was in the building despite all the windows being firmly sealed shut. One of the drying petals on the plant looked as though it had been brushed by a gentle breeze before breaking off like the most delicate of unwatered petals. It gently glided down towards the ground like a leaf in autumn, and Michael took a step backwards. In shock, he gave the plant a nod as if it was alive and engaging with him in conversation. He turned the bathroom light off, turned the hallway light off, and made his way into the bedroom. As he passed his bed to use the smallest shower room, Michael caught onto something strange on the duvet cover. It was the very same tomato stem that he disposed of earlier. He walked up to the side of his bed and stared at it for a minute. He angrily grabbed it and marched around the bed towards the shower room. He threw the stem into the toilet bowl, pulled his pajama bottoms down, and started to urinate. He took satisfaction from violating the green stem he thought he had already thrown away. Once he finished, he shook his genitals, gently closed the lid, and flushed the mix of fruit stem and urine down, never to be seen again. As a nightcap, Michael prepared a tall glass of water with a vitamin C tablet. The board still had the knife and lemon on it, so he used a paper towel to clean the board before throwing the knife into the sink. He binned what little remained of the lemon, grabbed the glass, and exited the kitchen, turning the light off as he did. Michael walked into his bedroom, clinging onto the vitamin drink like dear life. He turned the hallway light off and closed the bedroom door behind him before taking a sip, enjoying the strong, tangy taste and fizziness in his mouth. He walked over to his side of the bed, rested his glass down on the white desk of drawers, and turned the lamp on. He walked back over to the bedroom door and turned the main light off. He returned to his bed, slid into it, and sat up. He reached under the pillows beside him and pulled out 3 objects: a television remote, a chocolate bar, and Angela's vibrator. He put the other 2 aside to admire the vibrator before giving it a sniff and a kiss. "I really am pathetic, aren't I, Angela?" said Michael. "Then again, I may not be. Maybe you left it here on purpose so I could enjoy it. Oh, I appreciate it, I really do." Michael smiled and let out a snicker, putting the vibrator down as he turned the television on. Using Angela's special music hack, he went onto the playlist section and put on the nighttime sleepy time playlist they made together. The first song was Blondie's Hangin' on the Telephone. Michael enjoyed the song as he took another sip of his drink, turned the lamp off, and put a hand down his pants as he held Angela's vibrator to his face, rubbing it against his cheek and smelling it as he pleasured himself.